Firstly, without being a school teacher, you've made an error in your numbers on the pack.
The rest can do what they want. I don't really care.
If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it is a duck.
Why would you go for the extension if there's not much to be gained on the number side of things?
There needs to be a bit more meat on the bone and a bit less complications.
If you came in and said it's 400,000, then we'd be talking.
We're going to be taking a look at a commercial to residential conversion opportunity presented by Sukha Sanda on Property Elevator. If you haven't seen Property Elevator, it's a Dragon's Den style pitch show where property entrepreneurs come on TV. It's a show that's on Sky Channel 191 and they pitch for funding to 5 property angels. Featured on the show are property angels Nicholas Wallwork, Helen Chorley, John Howard, Paul Mahoney and myself, Ranjan Bhattacharya. Now, if you missed Property Elevator, you can catch it all. It was first shown on Sky Channel 191, but if you don't have Sky or you missed it, then you can watch it on Catch Up. The link's below. It's succeedinproperty.com/box set, and you can binge watch the whole lot. Now, what we do on this channel is we show the pitches as they went out on TV, but I am going to interrupt the flow now and then to give you my extra commentary and analysis on how the pitch went and what we were thinking as Sukha presented the deal. If you're liking this video, make sure you like. Also smash the subscribe button, hit the bell icon. We put out new content each and every week, all dedicated to keeping you on top of your property investing game. So without much further ado, let me hand you over to Elizabeth Warburton, the show's presenter, who meets up with Sukha before he comes in and faces the angels.
My name's Suk. I'm a doctor as my day job.
Okay.
And recently just got into property. Me and my brother sort of completed on a deal about a few months ago.
Congrats.
So something very new to us, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you've been doing it together?
Together, yeah, it was our first one. My dad's kind of had a few buy-to-lets in the past, so it's something we've always been around, but not taken the plunge.
So tell us about the deal that you've brought today then for the angels.
So today the deal that I'm bringing is a sort of mixed-use commercial and residential property. Looking to take advantage of the new permitted development rights coming in sort of from August to see whether there's an angle of converting it to residential to add some value.
Okay, and how much are you looking for back in today?
Ideally it would be sort of the full amount, so somewhere around 485,000 with some renovation costs, but we do have a small amount of money, but hopefully looking for the full amount.
Yeah, and not only the full amount, but you'll also get the experience
of course,
of one of the angels too, fingers crossed.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, good luck.
Thank you very much.
I'll be here as you leave and we'll have a chat on the way out.
Brilliant, cheers.
We've now got Sukha coming in. Looks to me like it's a freehold shop. I think he wants to develop the basement. I think upstairs is been sold on long leases, but they are relatively short long leases, if you get my meaning. In Greenwich, shall we get them in?
Hi, Sukha. So, Suk, tell us a little bit more about what this deal is all about.
This is a mixed-use freehold property which has a use class E retail shop on the ground floor. I think the lady was an artist who owns it and she was selling her artwork from there. The basement is a sort of 1-bedroom flat.
So just to be specific, you say it's a 1-bedroom flat, but it's part of the shop. It's not. It doesn't have planning use as a 1-bedroom flat.
I think the actual planning use is as a C3 residential for the basement.
Okay.
In terms of the deal, so what we would be looking to do in order to add value would be making use of the sort of forthcoming permitted development prior approval in August, using Class MA to convert the ground floor shop into a residential studio. So we're, given the space constraints, I think the ground floor is 38 square meters. which I think would be just enough for a studio.
Right, Suka's bang on the money here. He is, this was filmed just before the permitted development rights came into force. The permitted development rights that allow conversion of commercial properties to residential use that he's talking about came into force on August the 1st. So at the time of filming, he was certainly bang on the money with what he had found here. Just to reiterate, you've seen the building, and we'll show a little shot of it now. The red line shows what you're actually buying. So he's buying the freehold of the whole property. That gives him the right to do whatever he wants, wherever he wants in the building. But the upper floors are actually sold off on a long lease. So he has got no right to do any development above the ground floor. It's just on the ground floor shop, and there seems to be a basement there, and that's what we're looking at. So he's done his homework so far. It's all good signs. He knows that this shop is usage class E, which is basically the class usage you need to apply the new MA permitted development right, which allows for commercial to residential conversion. He's mentioning 38 square meters. The reason why he's interested in that is because he's done his homework. And when you convert commercial to residential, there is a minimum space standard you have to adhere to. So the minimum space standard for a one-bedroom flat is 37 square meters. That's why he's very interested in the viability of the floor plate for commercial to residential conversion.
What is the score with the freehold and the leases upstairs?
The property has 4 floors, so the two floors on top is a single flat.
Right.
It's quite a large flat. I think it's around about 1,000 square foot,
Nice
or just
size
over.
flat.
And that actually has a short lease on it. So it's got.
How long has the lease got to go
So
on?
it's 67 years left.
Okay, so that's good news. So
Yeah.
Well,
obviously,
it's not that good news. A short lease is 6 months. 67 years, well, I'll be dead. John will be dead as well. 67 years is not that short in the grand scheme of things. And I must reiterate that you cannot do anything until that lease is up. And also that leaseholder has the right to renew the lease as well, and pay you an extra premium for that. Because really, for all intents and purposes, all you can do with this property is all on the ground floor and the basement.
you can. It's likely that you could either buy that flat back in again when they decide to sell, because they can't sell to anyone else, unless of course they apply to have an lease extension. Going forward, the government are going to bring the new rules out. Not out yet, but they're going to bring new rules out. 999 year lease at £0 ground rent. So you've got to bear that in mind. And also, on a property like that with 67 years to go, you'd probably get 60 or 70,000 potentially for a lease extension. But under the new rules, that's going to be reduced. We don't know what that's going to be. It's going to be a different calculation to the one that they make it out for now. So just be careful on that. But there's certainly some value on the upper floors in terms of lease extension for you. So that's good.
That wasn't something I've added in.
So have you calculated that into your figures or not?
I haven't.
No, I didn't see it. Helen would have said if you had, probably.
I did kind of make a note of it, but
Yeah.
I didn't add it in.
No, okay. No one wants you to overinflate anything, but we do need to know the full facts.
Sure.
So that we can then ascertain, whether to invest or not.
I kind of agree that potentially the 30 grand is a little bit light with the renovation, depending on what needs to be done to the property, especially given there's a change of use. There might be some extra things that need to be done there to bring it to standard. The fact your brother's involved concerns me a little bit, because it means that if I was to invest, there's 3 parties involved in the deal, and the margins aren't huge already. So that's just one note.
But Paul, that depends on what
Of course, it depends
offer
on,
you're going to make for them to share the deal.
It depends on the
doesn't
split.
it?
I suppose that's not all we've heard. We haven't heard that yet, have we? I conservatively added in another 30 grand of total costs, which brings that down to 18%.
But
which again, you're getting a bit slim.
It is,
there.
but to be fair to Suka, he's got nothing in for the freehold revision upstairs.
That's true, but that may not happen.
The thing with that freehold revision is we don't know when. It's like popcorn. You don't know when it's going to pop.
Yeah.
It may pop in the first 3 months. It may not pop for another 5-10 years. because you can't force the issue.
No,
Or they
you
change
can't.
the
but
rules and the cost that
Well,
for the
I've
leaseholder.
heard.
Listen, as usual, the guy in the purple tie has talked a bit of sense there. Yes, there is a leasehold extension premium that's up for grabs. That is true. But you can't force the leaseholder to take you up on that. It's up to them when they decide to ask you for a lease extension. And that's normally triggered by one or two things, really. Either they want to sell up. If they want to sell up, they'll find that their lease is too short for a potential buyer to get a mortgage on, and that will trigger them getting excited about extending their lease. The other thing that triggers them is if they want to refinance or remortgage, because it's very hard to get a mortgage on leasehold properties where the lease remaining is less than 70 years. So until one of those trigger events happen, they won't actually ask you. The other thing to bear in mind, which hasn't really been raised yet, is that there is a certain exemption that exists for mixed-use property. So if the total commercial floor space is 25% or more of the total floor space of the building, then basically the leaseholders can't force you to sell their freehold or anything like that. It's exempt from many of the leasehold enfranchisement rules, which is something to bear in mind when partially converting commercial mixed-use buildings to residential use. If you convert commercial floor space and the commercial floor space becomes less than 25%, then the balance of power shifts to the other leaseholders.
The good news for you is I'm going to put some of that in my calculations for you.
I'm glad.
The rest can do what they want. I don't really care, because the only person is going to be doing the deal if we do it is you and me, not these lots.
Okay, that's very, very strange. As I said, you don't actually know when that leasehold premium will happen. I mean, those guys, if they're buy-to-let investors or whatever, you don't know who they are at the moment. They could just be sitting there for another decade without them exercising that right for the extension. The point that Paul mentioned about the refurb budget hasn't really been focused on too much yet, but I think should be. The refurb budget does seem to be very much on the light side at 30k.
Sound of things. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we haven't finished yet, so
Just putting my foot forward.
I am fascinated by the proposal in terms of what you're planning to do. It looks to me that the shop and the basement are connected. So in terms of what it is, it's basically one planning unit.
All of the other properties have is the whole of the basement is a C3 defined, residential dwelling.
And you know that because?
Because the estate agent actually showed me the lease plan for the property. I think it was 2 doors down or next door.
What I'd be looking for is evidence from, say, the valuations office website. Is there separate council tax? What's on the planning records for that particular property? This is very, very important because it's the layout, the floor plans that you've shown shows the basement is connected to the shop. So that means it looks. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. So it's basically one planning unit.
Valuation office I did have a look at, and that is, they're only paying rates on, I think it was 24 square metres.
That's still not the issue, because remember, the basement may be non-rateable. There are many areas of commercial buildings which are just non-rateable because they don't have a commercial use. So that could be just delisted that's not proof of what you're saying. The reason this is important is because under permitted development, which you want to go for, if you want to get a flat in the basement, you cannot assume that there's a flat already there unless there's something that definitely says it's there.
Okay, this is a very important point because I think a lot of people go around looking at commercial property or any type of property and they assume what they see on the ground is what it is. Or they assume that the estate agent details are absolutely correct. Or in this guy's case, he actually looked at a floor plan or something from a building a couple of doors down. That doesn't really matter to Hoots. The issue is, what is the planning status? And that's what you've got to verify. And that planning status needs to be documented somewhere, or if it's been in that sort of use for a long period of time, you will need to get sworn statements from the people who know that that's been in use for a long period of time, which kind of complicates things. You may have to legitimise that usage first by getting a certificate of lawful use. You may have to do all these things first before you can actually exercise your permitted development rights. So there are all sorts of issues to look at there. And the key thing that I was banging on about was the interconnection between basement and the shop. On the floor plans that he presented, it was clear that the two were interconnected, meaning there was internal access between the shop and the flat. Think of the EastEnders and the Queen Vic. So, you know, you got the Queen Vic. I haven't seen this show for years. I don't know who runs this, Queen Albert, whatever it's called now. But if you look behind the counter, they often go upstairs to the flat above the Queen Vic. So basically, the flat above, the residential space, is connected to the pub. It's part of the pub because there's an internal route of access between the two. Now, when that's the case, you basically have one planning unit. So what he was trying to assert was that the basement was already a separate planning unit, but it doesn't appear that there is firm evidence to back that up yet.
There was one other slight giveaway possibly, was that there's actually two separate utilities meters as well. So
Good.
One for the basement,
Good.
One for the upstairs. So that was another giveaway. I did actually email the agent 2 days ago to ask if there was any kind of proof, or, you know, if there was a planning application or anything.
Someone will swear an affidavit to say that's the basement's been used as a flat independently for more than 12 years. It's got a certificate of lawful use you can get from the council. And if you've got someone like the present owner or one before that who was happy to swear an affidavit saying, because it's true, of course, it has to be true, that it has been used for independent flat for more than 12 years, you will potentially get planning for that. You will have as good as planning. You can get a mortgage on it and everything else on that basis, so you can sell it off on that basis.
Is it 10 years?
Well, it's not. No, it's
it's
not
4 if it's resi
it's
to
4,
resi.
Yeah, it's
Commercial
not.
to resi is 10.
It's technically 10, but I like 12 because that way there's no argument about it.
Yeah,
if it's just 10, they can say, well, are you sure it's not 9? If you say 12 and you get the sworn affidavit on 12, then everyone knows what they're doing.
No
so
argument,
that's one angle that I think you might have on the basement, because otherwise, you know, you have to go for the full planning application, and it will create, you know, more costs for you, and obviously also there is a chance you won't get it. You probably will get it, but what do you think on that?
Well, first of all, you're right on the 10 years because
Thank you.
because it
Nicholas.
is connected. It's changing of use.
Yeah.
If it was separately split, then it would be 4 years, which it's not. So John's right on that one.
Ah.
The other thing is getting 10 years is going to be quite hard because you have to demonstrate continuous usage.
Yeah.
And you may need more than just the affidavit, but that's a planning consultant that you need to get. The problem is that if you cannot demonstrate that 10 years use as a basement flat, looking at the floor plan, it's unlikely that it would meet the natural light requirements to get it under permitted development. Looking at where the windows
I mean,
are.
there's a light well that does give quite a lot of natural light. You know, looking at the floor plan, I'm not sure if you can see there's a sort of quite a large window, and there is a door that's not on that floor plan as well, which is giving quite a lot of natural light. Then there's a sort of conservatory on the back as well, which is giving.
Yeah.
What's your return on?
Okay, what we're banging on about there is natural light. Now, the thing is, under new rules on natural light, this basement flat may not comply. So it's far better to go down the route of establishing its use. If you can prove that it's been used as is for 10 years, you get the certificate of lawful use, it's good to go. If you want to try to apply to get that planning permission or permitted development for the basement under new rules, you'll have to get light survey reports and all of that. And just looking at that location and the like, it's highly likely that it won't comply.
On cost of return on GDV for this?
Depending on whether an extension is done or not, so 700 or 706 or 760,000. And in terms of the cost, that would be 540 or 570,000.
And your return on cost and return on GDV?
Again, I would have to look that up. I think I may have put it in my pack, but I don't have the number on.
It's definitely not in your pack.
Is it not?
So it's 23% return on GDV, 29% return on cost, and it's about the same for either option as far as I can see, which then begs the question for me, why would you go for the extension if there's not much to be gained on the number side of things?
Being sort of slightly inexperienced and being my first property, I wanted to come, I didn't want to give you numbers that you will totally find sort of unreasonable.
Conservative is always good. And have you got any contingency in there?
Okay, before we get onto the contingency, very good point Helen's raised actually. He's got two options. So, one is basically do some conversion within the existing envelope. One is to spend some time and do an effort and money and do an extension. But the return is the same. So if there's no point in doing the extension, why bother? So the GDV, the return on GDV that's been quoted is 23%. Now I've banged on about this on previous videos that I think that in today's market, you really got to be looking at 30% return on GDV for commercial conversions. Yes, they're out there and you can achieve them. We'll get back to the video in just a moment. What is the most exciting opportunity in property right now? And that is repurposing defunct commercial buildings to residential use. Now, most people don't really know where to start, what to look for and how to exploit these opportunities. And that's why I've prepared 90 minutes of free training for you to get you started on this wonderful journey. You can register for this free training at property-workshop.com. Join me on that free training and I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of the video.
Like the renovation looks quite light to me, if I'm honest, for 30k for option one.
That's not something that I've put in there. The reason the renovation was quite low, and I was going to put it higher actually, was because when I went into the property was actually in very good condition.
Okay.
It's been plastered recently. The windows have been done.
Right.
Everything seems to be in order. And also,
okay, so
again, I don't
let me just explain a couple of bits and pieces. Yes, it's relevant that the windows have been done recently. That's nice to have new windows and the like. But if your property has been plastered and painted recently, that ain't going to help you much when you're doing commercial conversions, because most of that will have to be stripped out. It has to be stripped out because you're going to have to put fire protection between units, you're going to have to put in sound insulation and the like. You're going to have to renew the electrics to modern standards. May have to put in fire alarms and fire detection equipment and stuff like that. So what you're looking at is basically stripping out. When you do these sort of conversion projects, commercial to residential, you end up stripping out virtually everything that's there.
I don't know whether this will be of any interest, but my dad does a lot of building work himself.
Okay.
So he,
it's very relevant.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So he could definitely help with things like that as well.
I'm interested, how do you actually get to the basement?
It's lovely to have trades in the family and that kind of stuff. But one word of caution. When you're doing commercial to residential conversions, it is about the velocity of your cash. You want to be in and out in the quickest possible time. Now, what you've also got to equate is, that's great. If your dad's going to do the refurb, that's great. But if he's going to take 4 times as long to do it as getting in a sort of standard crew, because he's doing so many of the stuff, his stuff himself, you may find that you lose out cost advantage simply because the bridging finance and the financing is costing you more, and you're delaying getting out of the deal and getting into the next one. So always bear that in mind when you're trying to economize on labor by using friends and family.
If you're splitting this practically, where are you going to put the entrance?
There's a sort of a common shared access to the rear of, I think there's 3 or 4
from the
properties.
front, from the street, or from the back?
Not from this main street where the front is.
From an alleyway and then in.
Yeah, so all of the properties access their basement through.
Yeah, not so attractive, is it?
Is the postman going to like that? Going down a dodgy
I'm not worried
back
about
alley?
the postman. No one gets anything delivered anymore, Nicholas. You should know that. You're much younger than me.
Emails, isn't it now, John?
Emails now, apparently, so I'm told.
I mean, it's not ideal, but it does sort of create. I think because of the other 3 flats on that sort of parade
They all
are
do the
also
same
using
thing.
it. it's not as sort of dark and dingy as I thought it would be.
Okay.
No, you're spot on there. I mean, when you're doing access from the rear to flats above, behind commercial premises, what you really want to be is not the only one. You don't want to be the only flat that's accessed from a dingy rear pathway. If it's that pathway, that rear accesses multiple flats to several other properties, then it's constantly in use and it just has a better vibe for residential use.
Firstly, without being a school teacher, you've made an error in your numbers on the pack.
Right,
You
apologies.
put the remortgage value of the.
Don't worry, you can
75%.
save lives, he can't.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that.
It's true.
But it's
So you're
pertinent
kind of-
to the exit.
The exit
exactly.
plan leaves nothing in rather than the 14k out that you suggested. So I think, based on that kind of number, that rules out the 2-bed option, which is what you were basing that on.
I thought that you could only get a studio if it was 38 square metres and you couldn't have a 1-bed.
No, it's the minimum size is 37. It can be a studio or a 1-bed.
Oh, right.
Absolutely correct. 37 square metres, minimum space standards. You can have studio or 1-bed. What it is it means it's a one-person flat, but that can be a one-person studio or one-person 1-bed.
Okay.
So
Well then,
I don't know.
definitely would go for a 1-bed there.
And a 1-bed's going to be, I know it's the same square footage, Suka, but it will be worth more money. So I don't think you've done yourself, to be fair, you haven't done yourself the best in coming in without the best figures, without being over.
If the exit is a remortgage, the rents won't suffice for a standard buy-to-let mortgage. You'll probably be forced to go for, at the very least, a 5-year fixed product where the lender will lend to you at the pay rate rather than the benchmark of 5.5%. The other potential issue is if you do go with the studio or even a 1-bed at 38 square metres and the rents are at that level, you're really reducing your pool of lenders because it's a small unit with the rent that doesn't quite stack up. So that's, if you're selling, that's not so much a problem so far. Well, it's the buyer's problem.
I didn't quite understand what you meant to start with on
Sorry,
that.
so-
it's a bit complicated for me.
All right, so there was some changes with regards to mortgages a few years ago, where most buy-to-let mortgages you now need to meet a minimum benchmark rate of 5.5%. Even
Okay,
if you're
got it.
borrowing at 2 or 3, you need rent that will meet a certain benchmark.
Stress testing. Okay,
exactly.
sorry, I understand.
Now, there's more flexibility on 5-year products than there are on others.
Gotcha.
Because some 5-year products, they will stress test at the rate they're actually lending to you at. So that's my point, is the pool of lenders or products, more specifically, for these types of properties, it will be much smaller than your standard buy-to-let.
Okay.
What is your
Look, I don't understand what Paul's banging on about here. He's right, but when you're a buy-to-let investor, I would always advocate getting 5-year fixed rate lending. Why? Because the stress testing is at the pay rate, as Paul said. Also, as long as you know you're making cash flow from day one, then when you have a 5-year fixed rate buy-to-let product, you've got that surety of all your cash flow and your figures for the next 5 years. You don't have to worry about interest rates going up, down, all the rest of it. You've got that certainty for the next 5 years. So for buy-to-let, I'd always advocate doing that. And there are lenders out there that will, there are plenty of lenders out there that would lend on 37 square metre apartments. That's not the problem. The problem is with the basement flats. Sometimes many lenders don't like the basement flats, lower ground floor flats. That's where the problem is, but the one above ground would be no problem at all.
While this lot are still thinking about it, what price are you paying for it? Remind me.
I've been told by the agent 485 with a subject to planning offer would.
Okay. Unfortunately, I don't see this as a deal for me. If you came in and said it's 400,000, then we'd be talking, seriously talking. However, I think as a joint venture partner, you'd be a great joint venture partner. You're intelligent. You've got it all going on for you. Unfortunately, today this one isn't for me, but I wouldn't be dissuaded if you come back on another show with a little bit more knowledge,
Of course, yeah.
and giving the property the best chance you have of getting funded. And I don't think you've done that today.
I think where I am is
I think just to reiterate there, I think what actually got a little bit upsetting about this whole deal, I mean, the strategy's there, and these deals do work. They work up and down the country, and in particular London areas like this. But the problem is overpaying, and John's very much picked up on that, and he's actually pegged it back to a pretty much spot on number of about 400. Because if you remember early on in the video, we looked at the margin, the profit on GDV, and that is 23%, and it all boils down to that being just too wafer thin.
There's a bit too much ambiguity in the numbers, and you know, especially in terms of kind of how much room there is in the deal. Also, I'm probably not the best to handhold you through something like this, so not for me today, but thank you for coming.
Thanks. I think the problem with this particular deal is it falls down to the basics. I think you're overpaying for it, and I also think you have underestimated the refurb costs. I know you've got family in the trade and all of that, but it's actually the material costs of doing the soundproofing and the fireproofing and making separate dwelling units. That all is stuff that you have to buy rather than get a relative to provide as labour, if you see what I mean. I think you've underestimated that, and for that reason, I mean, this type of deal, you can do these in the same area with better margins. I think this is a fish you want to toss back in the sea, cast your rod again, get another one, and then come back to me.
Sounds good.
Material.
Listen, guys, you know, I mean, Suka, I'd love to work with you. If you're watching this, I'd love to work with you. That was just, it was the right deal. It's the right strategy. The strategy is the bang on the money. I've got students that are doing exactly this type of project around London, and they're making healthy margins because they have done it based on the fundamentals. I'm running some workshops, some free workshops on this. I'll put a link in the description below and on the screen here. Just sign up for the next one, and you can find out how to do these sort of deals right. And you can also see some case studies of some of the deals that my students are doing with these sort of commercial to residential conversions. Suka, you'd be great to work with, but this is just not the right deal from a numbers point of view only. From a strategy point of view, you're bang on the money.
Prices are going through the roof at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
So this is on a deal that's marginal. You know, you're going to be really pushed.
But it's all about the price, isn't it? I mean, if you know, Suka came in with a price of 400,000, we'd all be running around.
Sure.
You know, wanting to do the deal, and it's all about the selling is in the buying. It's all about buying at the right price, and you've got to be tough. And as a doctor, you're a very caring, kind, decent, caring person, unlike the five of us here. And you just need to toughen up a little bit on that, because, you know, it is a different business. It's a business, and you're not in a business. I understand that. You're caring for it, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. But this is a business, and you just got to probably be a little bit tough and a little bit harder when you're looking to negotiate.
Yeah, look, I think it's unfortunate. I like the area.
Very interesting analogy for John. The only thing I'll add, I think this deal is one to head down to Switzerland and head for Dignitas.
I've lived in this area for 5 or 6 years. I think your train of thought is right. You know, all the things you've been saying are right. And I think it's even a deal you could potentially make work yourself. I don't think it's really a deal you want to be bringing one of us into, because I look at it and think, well, for that to work for me, I'd need to be doing the whole thing. You know, I think that's my feedback on sort of presenting to a panel like.
Paul's pretty much right. You know, when you get down to wafer thin margins, it might work for him. With his family members involved, but there just isn't enough there to split the pie with someone else. If you're coming on the show next time, there's another 2 series planned, so there'll be plenty of opportunities to come on the show. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon on this channel. We'll notify you when those series are filmed. But if you want to involve a JV partner, if you want to get angel investment, you've got to be looking at that 30% margin hurdle rate in order for there to be enough meat on the bone to make it worthwhile for everybody.
Us there needs to be a bit more meat on the bone and a bit less complications, but it doesn't mean you can't make that work yourself. I agree with the guys that, you know, you seem to be kind of, it's not, the purchase isn't a deal. You're paying retail for this property, and you need to have a bit of an edge, a bit more of an edge to make this a bit more attractive.
I have to disagree with Paul there. I don't think you should do this deal at the current purchase price.
At all.
Quite frankly. I would
I agree.
Go back.
Okay.
See if it comes back to you.
Suka, thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you all
today,
for-
Thank you.
and we very much appreciate it. And I don't think you're too far off. You just need to tighten the
Nearly
figures up,
there.
as Helen says, tighten the price up, and you've got yourself a deal.
Fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you
Cheers.
very much
Thanks
for
a
coming
lot.
today. Thank you.
Thanks.
So how did you get on?
Didn't exactly go to plan, didn't manage to get an investment, but it was a good learning experience. And
Okay, that's a shame. Tell us a little bit of the feedback then that you got.
so it was mainly around, I think, the purchase price. So I think
Okay.
I was
Too
told
high?
too high, and potentially not showing all the avenues where you can add value. So I've learnt quite a lot from that, and you never know that if this deal's not one, there might be another one there.
Well, best of luck.
Brilliant, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Nice guy, lovely guy.
I love this type of deal. I just didn't think there's enough money in it.
No, no. If
Overpaying
it was a
$1 million.
£400,000, we'd all be, as I said, 400 grand, we'd all be interested, wouldn't we?
If you knew his return on cost and return on GDV, it would have been a better
He
start.
clearly doesn't run the surgery.
Doesn't do
he's
the bookkeeping.
doesn't do the bookkeeping bit, but he's obviously very decent, and he's just got to sharpen up and be a bit
And he
a
will.
bit tougher. And
He'll
he will
get that
do.
with
He
more
will do.
experience. It's only
Yeah.
his second deal, so
Exactly.
he will.
High streets across the land are changing forever. Basically, there's an oversupply of retail premises. Shops are closing down, more are going to close down in the future. The government know this, and that's why they're introducing a light touch planning system which allows small developers to easily repurpose these buildings to residential use under a light touch planning regime called permitted development. Now, this is going to be the biggest revolution and the biggest change and the biggest opportunity for property investors that I've ever seen. And this is all coming into effect on 1st of August. So you need to know what's happening and what properties to look for to take advantage of these opportunities so that you can get in there and take that first mover advantage. I've got a 90-minute free masterclass to get you ready for August the 1st. Make sure you join me, click the link below. Whether you're a beginner or expert, we'll get you started.